have the power to stop, to prevent, to stop a phone call to somebody's wife, girlfriend, mom, sister, brother. And so that realization and talking about those scenarios before it happens is, I think, where the power is at.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Apollonia Rockwell Show. I'm your co-host, Seth Silvers, another member here of the True Safety Services team, and I'm excited today to bring you into a conversation that we recently had on worker participation. I think one of the challenges that anybody with safety has is how in the world do you get workers involved in your safety program? Today, we're going to talk about the importance of worker participation and walk away with some practical tips for that. So let's dive right in. This is really similar to what we previously talked about in management leadership, of getting your managers to buy in. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure some of the tactics are similar, but give me an overview of what this core element of worker participation, what does this entail and why is this important?
So practical and culture, like I always think about it in like two different lanes. So worker participation, what it looks like is interactive near miss program, stop work program. There's reporting injuries. There isn't hesitation there. There isn't reprimand for reporting illnesses, injuries, first aids, concerns. That's what it looks like on the tangible side, is worker participation. I have feedback. Hey, I don't feel safe in this confined space. I might need a different setup. Or sometimes it's an engineering control and that's not feasible, but you're still standing up and saying, I don't feel comfortable doing this. Mm-hmm. And you're not fearful for losing your job. So that's like the tangible side. The culture side of the worker participation piece of it is the encouragement to report things and going back to there's no reprimand. And that all ties into the first step. That's why you need leadership on board first. Mm-hmm. But the second piece is I know for a fact that I'm not going to lose my job. My supervisor isn't going to be mad at me. My supervisor isn't going to demote me, or I'm not going to get passed on for a raise opportunity or a promotion because I'm using my voice and I'm saying, hey, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't look right. And that type of feedback is encouraged. So that's what worker participation means.
Yeah. Is that normal? Or talk to me about what's normal in some of these fields like oil and gas and construction. Like what's the norm amongst what happens if people, speak up about a hazard or if they stop work?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not normal. It's not normal. And you know what I was thinking the other day is It's not just in the workplace. Like our behaviors at home, they don't just switch on and off at the workplace. We're mm-hmm. human beings. The whole don't bring your work, you don't bring your home life to work. I don't even know what that's not real life. Right. We are human beings.
Right.
And I just don't think in general it's generally accepted to raise your hand and say, this doesn't look, people don't want to cause friction. Mm-hmm. And if you saw something at the store that's unsafe, if you saw somebody that's dangling 1 foot on a ladder at Target, like little things like you're not going to say anything.
Why is that? Why do you think people have such a hard time
speaking up?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. The only thing I could think of is just not wanting to cause friction and just that mindset of this problem isn't mine. Mm-hmm. It's not my problem. It's not my job. That terrible mindset. I hate that phrase. This isn't my job. That's not my place to speak out.
Yeah. And have you seen some incidents and worked on some incidents where it clearly would have been avoided if, worker B would have called out what worker A was doing?
Every single time. Seth. I go back to almost every incident that I've worked on. There's been very few incidents where a worker was alone and was injured. Even if they were on a solo project, I won't forget this one gentleman was welding on a tank, and he had his ladder like tilted up on the tank, and he was on top of the ladder, but he had welded on the bottom of this ladder these little stops, but it was all makeshift. These little stops for the ladder to lean up against, so that way he could properly climb on top and weld on top here. And the kick stop broke off while he was on top of this ladder welding. He was actually using at this time grinder. The kick stop broke, ladder fell. This employee, the grinder slit open his face from like here to here. So it was like a 5-inch gash in his face. And even though that was a solo project, when I was interviewing, after this, there was so much blood, as you can imagine. It was horrible.
Right.
Even a solo project like that, interviewing employees after this, people saw there was somebody that walked by. There was an admin girl that walked by. There was a supervisor. There was somebody leaving their shift. And Seth, every single person said, I knew that didn't look right. That's wild. I have never. I go to the most severe cases where an employee almost lost his hand. His hand was shredded off. His hand was placed on a shovel, and it got caught in an auger, and it took his hand. Somebody was right there and saw what happened. Mm-hmm. They knew that he didn't lock out the piece of equipment. Yeah.
So, the worker participation really comes down to workers feeling like they can participate without any kind of reprimand. What are some things that can be done in the workspace, whether it's from safety managers that are seeing this is a problem? Like, what can they do to help encourage this?
Yeah, I think some tangible steps would be during your safety meetings. Something that I've done, something that we've experimented with is during safety meetings, and we're grouping everybody in to smaller groups so people feel more comfortable talking, sharing some real life experiences. One thing that we did was broke everybody into groups. We had mock incidents per group, and everybody talked about that incident. People talked about how did we get here, and those incidents, those scenarios that I put in everyone's group were incidents that had happened at that company for that year. And so some employers were like, this is they weren't in that division, but this is the dumbest scenario ever. How could anybody? And it's like, hey, buddy, this happened last year.
To your buddy.
This happened to your buddy last year. And it was like kind of funny in a way where people were like, these are all our company incidents in the last 3 years. So this happened. And so they talked about how did it get there?
Right.
How did we get here? And they came up to the conclusion worker A wasn't looking out for worker B, because I would have the incident. I took all these companies' incidents, put them into groups, and then the questions that they had to discuss in the group was what could have been done to prevent this from happening. They come up, Seth, when that's the goal for the safety managers. It's reverse psychology, with anything. They have to come up with the idea. They were like, well, the supervisor didn't obviously give a shit about their employee. They were rushing their employees. Apollonia, worker A didn't give a shit, and they turned their back on the employee. That's how this happened. And I'm telling you, Seth, everybody was like, boom, boom, boom. light bulb, light bulb, light bulb. I solved the problem, Apollonia. This is what could have been done to prevent the incident. And it was like,
so, I mean,
aha
it sounds
moment.
like just, I mean, talking about it, talking about it and showing that it's a safe place to talk about incidents, to figure out what's going on. I mean, it really sounds almost like more of a cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing. Like, you're right, Seth. And this is why we start with management leadership, because they have to understand the responsibility that they carry, because that culture piece, you know, I'll never forget too, an incident where a gentleman burned about 30 to 40% of his body, and the supervisor wasn't there when this happened. But they felt like they were responsible, right? And so we're at the hospital talking to this gentleman's parents.
Right.
And it's almost like then, as a supervisor, you feel the responsibility and the power that you have.
Yeah.
Of, I could have prevented this from happening.
Yeah.
And so when you do those preventative things, like having safety meetings and throwing out mock accidents and asking the employees and the supervisors what could have done to prevent this from happening, it's always somebody should have stopped this. And it's then that somebody realizes that I have the power to stop, to prevent, to stop a phone call to somebody's wife, girlfriend, mom, sister, brother. And so that realization and talking about those scenarios before it happens is, I think, where the power's at. That's like a tangible tool that you can do as a supervisor, as a safety manager. Try that this week. Try that this month.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Apollonia Rockwell Show. If you really like this episode, I encourage you, whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, go and leave a review. It's really, really important. That's a simple way to show the platforms, hey, this is good stuff and they should show it to more people. We will be back next week with another episode. We'll see you soon.